Coming up on this evening's early edition at 6, the UN Security Council adds North Korea's human rights violations to its agenda and plans to open an office on the issue in Seoul. The chief analyst of Asia-Pacific sovereigns at Fitch dismisses the notion that the Korean economy might be headed the same direction as that of Japan, adding there's some room for flexibility on the key rate. And for the fifth time since last week, Korean nuclear power plant documents are leaked online. Stay tuned for these and more.
Hello and welcome everyone. You're watching Early Edition at 6, brought to you live from Seoul. I'm Na-hyun Kyung.
And I'm Daniel Chet. Thank you for joining us. The United Nations Security Council has decided to put North Korea's human rights violations on its agenda.
That means the topic can be brought up anytime when deemed necessary for the next 3 years.
Right. China and Russia, of course, were the only two countries that voted against that move. For more details, we have our Connie Lee starting us off.
It's official. North Korea's human rights issues are now part of the UN Security Council's agenda.
The DPRK is in effect a totalitarian state which uses violence and repression against its own citizens to maintain itself. The regime's atrocities against its own people have created an inherently unstable state.
Members of the council voted on Monday to formally take up the issue of Pyongyang's alleged human rights abuses. This despite objections from China and Russia. However, there are no vetoes in procedural votes like this one, where an agenda is being set, so the other members were able to override the objections. This is the first time that the top UN body has taken up North Korea's human rights issues. Previously, discussions on Pyongyang were solely centered on the North's nuclear weapons program, but now all aspects of the country will be monitored and discussed. The latest ruling could also serve as a prelude to punitive measures against Pyongyang in the future, as it comes a matter of days after the UN General Assembly voted in favor of referring North Korea to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. North Korea, which has refused to cooperate at every step, quickly denounced the decision. Monday's report follows a stinging UN report released in February that said North Koreans face unspeakable atrocities. These include forced labor in the country's prison camps, deliberate starvation, executions, and torture. This latest move ramps up international pressure on Pyongyang to finally treat its own people better. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And to closely monitor North Korea's human rights situation, the UN plans to open an office in South Korea. The when and where have not been announced officially yet, but South Korean daily 세계일보 reports that the office will be set up in Seoul next March. Citing multiple sources from the government and Seoul City Hall, the report says South Korea's foreign ministry and the city are in the final stages of their negotiations. The field office in Seoul would work to expand the database of evidence to hold the regime responsible for crimes against humanity. There are concerns, though, that this will hurt Seoul's relations with Beijing and Moscow, as the two countries have previously voiced their opposition to this decision. And staying with North Korea, its internet network or the system is partially up and running now, but only after access was totally blocked for about 10 hours on Tuesday, Korea time. Some speculate it was Washington's retribution for the recent hacking attack on Sony Pictures. For this story, here's Shin Se-min.
We will respond. We will respond proportionally, and we'll respond in a place and time and manner that we choose.
Days after U.S. President Barack Obama said he would take proportional measures against the cyber attack on Sony Pictures that's been blamed on North Korea, the communist state experienced its worst network collapse in years. North Korea has since gained full access to the internet, but only after 10 hours of disruptions. It's not yet clear what caused the outage. But suspicion immediately turned to the United States in light of the recent attack on Sony Pictures. Deputy spokesperson for the U.S. State Department Marie Harf declined to comment on the reports that North Korea had lost its internet access, but did say that as the U.S. implements its responses, some will be seen and some may not be seen. Access to the internet is limited in the north, and what is offered comes from a Chinese-run provider. Only a small number of people are allowed online, and very little commercial or government-related business is done on the web. For that reason, experts say the outage isn't expected to have any lasting economic effects on the north. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The South Korean government will not allow an opposition lawmaker from traveling to the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex tomorrow. The Unification Ministry says it rejected Representative Park Ji-won's request to visit the site. He was invited by Kim Yang-gun, North Korea's top official for inter-Korean issues. Now, the ministry explained that since Park already visited the north twice over the last 2 months, another trip seemed inappropriate. While Park's request was denied, the government approved Hyundai Group chairwoman Hyun Jung-eun's plan to visit the industrial zone.
Let's shift our focus outside of Korea for this next story. Pope Francis says the Vatican's bureaucracy has been infected with, quote, spiritual Alzheimer's and the terrorism of gossip. The Pope continues his push for reforms, and some see his latest comments as a sign that he is being met with some opposition from within the church. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
Pope Francis has offered up a blistering critique on the cardinals, bishops, and priests who run the Curia, the central administration of the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope said some of the church's bureaucrats were infected with 15 ailments, as he called them, headlined by gossip.
Gossip is a serious disease that starts with a thread and grabs the whole person. It is the sickness of the cowards who, not having enough courage to speak directly, speak behind people's backs.
Pope Francis also called out power-hungry clerics who he said will kill the reputation of their colleagues and brothers in cold blood for their own greed or success. He said some were suffering from spiritual Alzheimer's and that they forgot what first brought them into the priesthood. To cure the ails that plague the church, the Pope called for reforms.
A curia that does not do any self-criticism, that does not renew itself, and does not try to improve itself is a sick body.
The Pope is hoping to use cardinal advisors he has appointed to fight corruption and poor management within the church. Part of the reforms may include reining in the curia's power, which has been concentrated in Rome for centuries, giving bishops around the world a bigger say in Roman Catholic Church doctrine. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
And now on to the latest development from Korean Air's nut rage incident. Prosecutors plan to request a provisional arrest warrant for Cho Yeon-ah, the former vice president of the nation's flagship carrier. They say this will happen tomorrow, and she's facing charges of violating a number of aviation security laws, as well as allowing her aide to water down the scale of the incident and tamper with evidence. Cho was thrust into spotlight early this month after making a Seoul-bound Korean Air flight turn back to the gate after getting upset that a flight attendant did not serve macadamia nuts according to protocol. She is the eldest daughter of the airline's CEO, Cho Yang-ho. Now, South Korea's cyber crisis alert level was elevated one notch to the third highest on a scale of 5 this morning. This as President Park Geun-hye urged authorities at a cabinet meeting to thoroughly investigate the alleged hacking of a computer system at the state-run nuclear power plant operator. The hacker, or group of hackers that claims to have gained access to the power plant's network, released another set of documents online a couple of hours ago. ago. This is the 5th such leak since the first last week. As for North Korea's alleged cyber attack on Sony Pictures, President Park urged officials to inspect Seoul's ability to counter cyber terrorism. The Korean government has finalized a 3-year plan to better utilize information and communications technology when responding to disasters. The ICT ministry says that roadmap includes consolidating resources and information between relevant ministries and looking out for potential disasters using the Internet of Things technology and high-definition surveillance cameras. Today's announcement comes as efforts to bolster disaster preparedness took off months ago following April's ferry accident where some 300 lives were lost.
Well, some here in Korea fear for the worst. The chief analyst for Asia-Pacific sovereigns at Fitch Ratings told us there's no need to worry that much. Korea can show flexibility in cutting the central bank's key interest rate. Our Hwang Ji has sat down to talk about Korea's economy with Mr. Andrew Kohun. Let's take a look.
So, Andrew, many here in Korea are drawing parallels between Korea and Japan, saying that Korea is close to the kind of slow growth and falling prices that its neighbors suffered from for 2 decades. Do you also agree with the comparison?
I think that comparison is rather overdone. We expect Korea's economy to grow about 3.7% this year, rising to 3.9% next year. And there are plenty of countries in the world that would be very happy to be growing at those kinds of rates. I think there's a risk of some months of negative price changes next year, partly as a result of the decrease in oil prices. But for an energy importing country like Korea, lower oil prices and perhaps even a temporary or mild deflation might not be such a bad thing.
So what should Korea focus more on, longer-term sustainable growth or boosting the short-term recovery momentum?
Well, it's not for us as a ratings agency to give policy advice, so that's an important point for us to stress. I think from our perspective, what I'd say is that Korea's degree or scope for policy flexibility, both on the monetary and on the fiscal side, is a strength in the credit profile. So compared to some of Korea's high-income advanced economy peers, the central bank has room to cut interest rates. Public debt is moderate. So the authorities have scope to use the budget to assist in economic management, more than is the case in many of the country's high-income peers.
Now, household debt, that is one of the major risks of the Korean economy. Could that possibly develop into a crisis that could threaten the stability of the country's financial industry?
Well, Korea does have quite a high degree of household debt compared to its peers, so roughly 90% of GDP in household debt, which is higher now than the US. Well, I think that how I view household debt is as something that decreases the economy's resilience to significant negative shock if one were to materialize. So from that point of view, it's something that weighs on the credit profile, weighs on the ratings.
And what risks could there be when the Fed actually starts to raise its key interest rate?
Thinking about financial market behavior, investors have tended to treat Korea as more of a safe haven. What I'm saying is that we don't view US monetary policy tightening as a risk for Korea in the same way as it is for some other countries in the Asia-Pacific region.
Well, on Monday, the Finance Ministry announced a set of structural reform measures that will help secure sustainable growth. Our Kim Jun delves deeper into the topic today, especially on how next year will be a crucial year for making those changes and achieving that goal.
Next year is a golden time to carry out structural reforms of the Korean economy. This is what Finance Minister Choi Kyung-won had in mind when he laid out a set of comprehensive economic policy directions this week. There are no nationwide elections scheduled for next year, meaning that the Park Geun-hye administration can focus less on wooing voters and more on implementing changes. Developing the employment system is regarded as an integral part of the structural reforms. Choi has stated before that local companies are reluctant to hire employees for permanent positions because it's not easy to lay people off once they're hired. The number of temporary positions has reached an all-time high, with official figures estimating the number at more than 6 million this year. Those recruited for temporary positions face job insecurity and lower pay compared to their permanent counterparts, even though they may be doing the same exact work. The need for structural reforms is in the spotlight amid dismal forecasts for our Korean economy, battling low growth and a shrinking workforce. A study by the Korea Development Institute shows that the potential growth rate of 3.6% will drop to 2.7% between years 2021 to 2030 and tumble to the 1% range starting in 2031. The state-run think tank attributes that to Korea's aging society, as the number of workers aged between 15 to 64 is thinning. Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency's World Factbook has a total fertility rate at 1.25, placing it in 219th place among the 224 countries surveyed. The problem is compounded by the growing number of job seekers who are part of the 7 million-strong baby boom generation, who are now starting to exit the labor market in mass numbers. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
Samsung Group's heir apparent Lee Jae-young has leapfrogged a couple of other Korean tycoons to become Korea's second wealthiest person. According to Bloomberg's billionaire list on Tuesday, Lee's estimated net worth stands at around $7 billion. That's following two IPOs of Samsung companies, the IT services affiliate Samsung SDS and the group's de facto holding firm Seoul Industries. He is now the 183rd richest person in the world. The only other Korean with a bigger fortune than Lee is his father, Lee Gun-hee. And Hyundai Motor recruits Albert Bierman. What are his credentials? Well, he only spent more than 30 years with BMW, working as vice president of the M Performance car line. Well, Hyundai says he will begin work at the company's research center in April as the group's executive vice president. That makes him Hyundai's second highest ranked foreign executive after design chief Peter Schreier, who is credited with revamping many models of Hyundai's sister company, Kia Motors. Bierman will be in charge of testing and developing performance cars, helping to improve the ride quality and handling. Smartphone platform services continue to evolve as they penetrate deeper and further into our daily lives. A bright future lies ahead of the market as Korea and other Asian countries edge ever closer to a truly mobile-only era. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
Information and communications technology is increasingly a part of our daily lives. And with the mobile sector now blazing forward to lead a platform revolution, it's expected that in 2015, more Koreans will take advantage of the growing number of services available to them anytime, anywhere, through their smartphones. For example, when they're on the road. Just last week, Korea's #1 mobile messenger, Daum Kakao, signed a deal with Seoul's Taxi Association and Transportation Card Service to launch a taxi hailing application next year. Shopping and food delivery via smartphone is also on the rise, making it more and more convenient to order on the go. And banking apps are also expected to gain popularity, like Daum Kakao's bank wallet Kakao, which is already being supported by 16 major banks, with more than 500,000 people subscribed to it in just the third week of its launch. Interest in these mobile platforms comes naturally, as Korea's smartphone penetration is among the highest in the world. But it's also a global trend, with more surfing the internet through mobile devices compared to PCs. Speaking at Google's Mobile First World event last month, Executive Chairman Eric Schmidt said the world is changing from a web-first world to a mobile-first world, with Asia leading the market for many years to come. And the next transition forecast for the region is going mobile only. Korea's ICT ministry reported that the number of households owning smartphones this year stood at 84%, outnumbering those owning computers for the first time. That's why industry watchers expect fierce competition among smartphone platform developers and, in turn, increased use and dependency of mobile apps in our everyday life. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
Well, in any industry, you set attainable, achievable goals and move step by step, baby steps. And breaking that 100 million admissions mark used to be an elusive dream for the Korean film industry. They could reach out and touch it, but could not.
Well, not anymore. That goal has already been reached this year. For this story, here is Park Ji-won.
More than 100 million tickets have been sold for Korean films at cinemas this year, marking the third straight year of achieving the milestone.
I came to see the Korean film Ode to My Family, which is currently #1 at the box office.
I'm proud that in terms of special effects, plots, and visual themes, I feel that Korean films now are as good as foreign films.
Last year, the number of people buying tickets for domestically produced films exceeded the 100 million mark in early October. This year, it took a couple more months to reach the mark. Korean films got off to a relatively slow start this year, especially compared to Hollywood blockbuster releases, such as the latest Transformers movie and the 7th installment of the X-Men movies. However, the tide started to turn as we got further into 2014, with the opening of the period action film The Admiral Roaring Currents. The film recorded more than 17 million ticket sales over the summer, a record for a Korean film in Korea. Another Korean action film, The Pirates, was also an overwhelming success, selling more than 8 million tickets.
Last year, we had several Korean films attracting 3 to 4 million viewers. But this year, The Admiral, Roaring Currents achieved that figure on its own. 2014 has been marked by the success of a small handful of films, pushing us to the 100 million mark.
The popularity of Korean films is continuing into December as well, with the heart-wrenching drama set during the Korean War, Ode to My Family, and the documentary film My Love, Don't Cross That River. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
But of course, the popularity comes with fierce competition within the industry, or at least that's what I think.
Right, and that said, Korea's regulatory authority has actually slapped millions of dollars in fines on 2 of the nation's biggest movie chains for, I guess, being big bullies in some sense.
Or unfair practices,
That's
right? For more on this story, here's Connie Kim.
Korea's 2 biggest movie chains, CGV and Lotte Cinema, have been fined a combined $5 million for engaging in unfair practices. These practices include giving affiliate distributors more screens to show their movies and allowing them to screen the films for longer periods of time. The Fair Trade Commission said the moves gave CJCGV and Lotte Cinema an unfair advantage at the box office. The FTC pointed to 2 hits in particular: CJ E&M's Masquerade, a 2012 film that attracted more than 10 million viewers, and Lotte Entertainment's The Taste of Money, which was released that same year on triple the number of screens than competing films. The watchdog said the 2 movie chains also gave out free movie discount coupons without the consent of distributors.
It's meaningful because the Commission is taking strong legal action for the first time against the unfair practices of large, vertical, integrated cinema chains.
Following up on the fines, the Culture Ministry says it'll more closely monitor the screening practices of Korean movie chains to ensure that no benefits are being handed down to affiliates. The case has put the oligopoly of the Korean film industry back in the spotlight. The top 3 multiplexes in Korea make up more than 90% of screen shares in the country. And about 30% of all films produced each year aren't even released in theaters. Experts say a new platform for independent, low-budget films is needed for diversification.
I think it is a great idea for major companies to build theaters only for smaller films, but not if it's merely a temporary measure to avoid the separation between distribution and screening.
And market watchers say if these theaters reserved for small firms are given enough support, a positive synergy effect in the industry can be created. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Well, let's it seems like we're getting a break from the cold snap at last.
Right, but people keep bursting my bubble that we won't see snow on Christmas Day this year. But anyway, let's go to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for the latest. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, guys. Well, as Daniel mentioned, colder than the seasonal average weather has finally eased up nationwide. The daytime high here in Seoul earlier today reached up to 5 degrees, which is about 4 degrees higher compared to yesterday. So it was relatively comfortable for us to spend time outdoors. And at the moment, the nation is at the edge of a high pressure front approaching from Jeju, which is leading to cloudy skies throughout. Those of you in Gangwon-do and both Gyeongsang-do provinces should make sure to stay hydrated as dry weather advisories continue to be in effect. Well, Christmas is just around the corner, and there is a possibility of light snow for the central regions early tomorrow morning, but it won't be enough for us to enjoy a white Christmas. Other than that, it looks like we'll be able to enjoy moderate numbers as well as clear skies throughout the week. On to tomorrow's ratings. Seoul makes it to 5, Daegu hits 10, Gwangju reaches 9. Moving on to other places, Jeju reaches 12, Dokdo hits 9, Mount Kumgang dips to -3. Those are all the updates I have for you now. Enjoy your day. I'll be back with more after 8.
Thanks for that, Bo-kyung. Well, that does it for us. Have a great start to your day or a safe drive home. This has been Daniel Chan.
And I'm Na Hyun-kyung. Make sure you stay warm if you're in Korea. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.